Fortnite's The Apocalypse chapter 173 is out, and this was another fantastic chapter. The battle between Ruthus and NASIENS ends. We get a massive reveal and showcase of NASIENS' true strength in this chapter, and my god, was the art great, and I cannot wait to jump in and start talking about it. But before we jump into things, don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. Really helps, and it shows you guys enjoy the content I make here on the channel and shows you want to see more. Now, I previously set a challenge. If I make it to 30k by the end of the year, I'm going to do retrospectives for 7 Deadly Sins and Fairy Tail for their manga. But with the time we have left, I highly doubt we're going to get there. But we'll just make it for whenever I reach 30k in general. So once I hit 30k in general, even if it's next year, I will begin my retrospective reviews for Fairy Tail and 7 Deadly Sins, so look forward to that when the time eventually comes. Now then, let's jump right into this chapter. Fortnite's The Apocalypse chapter 173, titled The Dialogue, with the cover image being Percival and NASIENS planting some plants and herbs. And look, we all know about NASIENS' situation, but the way Nakaba has been drawing NASIENS in a lot of frames, and especially here in this cover image, is incredibly feminine, so it's safe to say that's the direction Nakaba's going to go with NASIENS. Though I do feel like he's dragging it out a bit too long at this point, and I feel this constant teasing of how he's drawing NASIENS right now is just dragging out too long, so at this point just commit. Because I think the fans aren't really going to care that much, because NASIENS is already a great character, and we've already established stuff with NASIENS, so I feel like Nakaba should just lock it in, and just make a decision, because regardless of the fact, we all love NASIENS. Now then, on to the actual chapter. We continue from last week, where Ruthus ends up opening a gateway to Purgatory, saying that he was NASIENS' worst possible opponent. And as we cut back to Beltrop and the announcer, Beltrop says that that portal leads to Purgatory, a world of searing heat, frigid cold, and lethal poisons. Simply touching the miasma that's seeping through could kill a person. As then see a panel with Ruthus as the actual miasma is starting to disintegrate the arena around him. As NASIENS recognizes that that is the miasma coming out from Purgatory, Ruthus ends up saying, "What will it be? If you're meant to feed like a sportsman should, I'll close the rift. But if you want to keep going, you're going to end up dying, so I won't stop you." Now, NASIENS is contemplating over absorbing just a small bit of the miasma in order to neutralize its toxic effects with the venom mixing power that they have. But it's then that we get a flashback to the time NASIENS spent in Leonis training under Hendrickson, as Hendrickson tells NASIENS to avoid overconfidence, as a single misstep could lead to their death, so they have to proceed carefully, so he wants to make this clear to NASIENS 100%. The ability to neutralize, create, and combine poisons within their body is an amazing magic that even Hendrickson is jealous of. But he does say that this ability does pose a risk, because NASIENS has to actually take in a bit of the poison to capture that very component to turn it into a medicine or to use it himself. And even NASIENS says that I do try to take as little of it as possible to avoid the danger. But Hendrickson nails it home to NASIENS, saying that that doesn't mean it's still not risky. With some poisons, even the tiniest grain of it can be lethal. Even with the incredible immunity that NASIENS has, it's still too unpredictable. And that the same is true for memory blockers too. Without that magic, you're just a regular boy. I don't know what that means by memory blockers. I feel like I have heard that phrase before. Let me know in the comment section, because this feels important and I want to know about that. Let me know in the comments if this rings a bell. But NASIENS receives the advice and message. And I like bringing Hendrickson back into the equation because he's a doctor. He specializes right now in poisons and medicines and holistic medicine in Leonis, and he does it to help Dreyfus. But having NASIENS spend that time to learn more about it under Hendrickson, someone who has a lot of experience with this type of stuff, is a really nice thing and helps add more to NASIENS' time in Leonis, showcasing their initial growth. So it's nice bringing in previous characters that are teaching something to the newer generation, which is something I always like in any type of sequel. Especially in this case, Hendrickson nailing home to NASIENS the dangers of their ability, considering that it's poison we're dealing with, and depending on the type, even though NASIENS takes precautions, the smallest bit could still kill him. So that is really good clarification, showcasing that even NASIENS could potentially die from a poison if it's too strong. Now, back in the present, NASIENS is contemplating over taking a sample of the poison from Purgatory, but it'd be for nothing if they died in the process of it. But NASIENS still states that they can't just sit there and do nothing, because they want to get at least a little bit of revenge for An. And NASIENS knows that Ruthus was involved in what happened to An, even though not directly. It didn't really stop Turret from basically cheating and pummeling An to near death with a Purgatory beast. So there's that. But we see that Nasiens keeps walking away from the miasma, but Nasiens makes it to the edge of the cliff. Now, Donnie in the stands is freaking out over the fact that Nasiens isn't going to be able to use their specialty to actually win this, and Dubs is stating that, well, this was definitely a terrible matchup, saying that the Fairy Clan in general just has really bad luck, which, looking back on King, Helbram, Elaine, even Gloxinia, as well as the second Fairy King Dahlia, they've all just had really bad luck. Even Sixtus in the previous arc, if we really think about it, which, wow, that is just insane to really think about. Dubs has actually got a point on this one. Nasiens is at the edge of the arena as Rothus gives the option to give up or just plummet to their death over the edge of the cliff. It's then that Nasiens comes to a realization and jumps off the side of the ledge. And as everyone's thinking that Nasiens is forfeiting by committing unalive, we see Nasiens fly up into the sky, showcasing that he can fly and float. And Nasiens is still like, oh yeah, I completely forgot I could actually fly, can I? Which, honestly, I'm going to say still kind of makes sense. Nasiens is still getting used to being able to fly, and Nasiens just learned and awakened to their abilities less than, like 2-3 days ago, less than a week ago. So makes sense that Nasiens, over 18 years, never knew how to fly, now has that ability. It makes sense to forget about it until the very last minute. So I'm not going to give any criticism. It makes complete and total sense to me. Now, Nasiens floating up in the sky is told by Rufus that regardless of flying up into the sky, the miasma goes up and down and all around, so it'll reach Nasiens eventually. And Nasiens is thinking of their options, because they can't use poison, and they can't fight up close with their daggers. So it's still not really sure how Nasiens can win, as Nasiens then hears a voice in their head, saying, "You ain't gonna use me?" As Nasiens is wondering who's talking to him, and is wondering if this is the effects of the miasma, but the voice keeps saying, no, it's the pendant you have on. The pendant. As Nasiens looks down at the pendant that King gave to him, a piece of the spirit Chastiefol, a piece of the sacred fairy tree. Nasiens is wondering why the pendant is all of a sudden talking to him and sounds familiar, but the pendant says, yeah, that's because it's the second time you're talking to me. As Nasiens realizes that it's the sacred tree speaking to him. Okay, I'm gonna say this. I am so glad we're actually getting the fairy tree actually encouraging the next generation of the fairies for the next fairy king and speaking to Nasiens, because in Seven Deadly Sins, it doesn't seem like King actually was able to somehow communicate with the fairy tree, but now Nasiens can, which is interesting to say. This is probably not about adding something in, but this also shows that compared to the three primordial deities of the world of Seven Deadly Sins, the Supreme Deity, the Demon King, and now the Great Fairy Tree, and, well, I guess Lady of the Lake also, so 4 technically, not counting Chaos, the Sacred Fairy Tree is the most kind and compassionate to their creation, so yeah, it is actually willing to help the people that it essentially created, so already the best god in that universe. And I just love how all this conversation between Nasiens and the Sacred Fairy Tree is in his head. Meanwhile, everyone's like, is Nasiens going crazy? He's just talking to himself. As Nasiens is wondering, how can a piece of jewelry talk to me? It's then that the Fairy Tree says, in that case, picture me in whatever way you want. After giving it a quick thought, Nasiens opens their eye, and we see a little fuzz ball with an afro and a weird non-leg ghost-like appearance. As Nasiens is kind of dumbfounded, slapping their face like, this looks ridiculous, and even the Sacred Fairy Tree is like, what kind of image is this? You couldn't make me look more divine than this? Which, same. This literally took me by surprise reading it for the first time. But this is just that type of humor that I would expect Nakaba Suzuki to do. And I guess if you're going to have 2 decks for deities in this universe look cool and awesome, having the only helpful one look kind of goofy and ridiculous based off the mental image of one of the characters just feels like a nice juxtaposition, I guess. Pretty fun gag, though. But now we have an actual image of the Sacred Fairy Tree that isn't just a giant-ass tree that we cannot see the top of that spans an entire realm of existence. And they've got a personality, which is honestly really cool to see. So the Sacred Tree says, anyway, you're chosen by me and all. You gotta shape up fast for me, kid. As Nasien's wondering, why did you pick me? There were other fairies far more qualified than I. Obviously talking about their fairy siblings like Sixtus and Tiore, so makes sense, Nasien's never felt worthy of that type of power. But it's then that the Sacred Tree just laughs and actually gives the reason for picking Nasien's in the first place. A pure, upright kid who doesn't like conflict, but will commit to it if it'll protect what's dear to them. Saying that Nasiens is just like their father King, which I am so happy we got this type of clarification. While this wasn't anything super needed, after Naziens gained the powers to utilize Chastiefol, this was a criteria that I think we all wanted to know what made Naziens worthy besides being the firstborn of King Indian. And this makes complete and total sense. Even going back to 7 Deadly Sins, despite everything that's happened to King and his relative poor decision-making, King never really gave up on protecting the people that he cared about, regardless of his obviously weird and dumb decisions sometimes, where he would fumble every now and again. He didn't like to fight or hurt people, but would do it to protect the ones that he cared about. Which, despite his relatively slothful nature, for the most part, that's King in a nutshell. Someone that will protect those that he cares about, but just wants to goof off and do nothing and doesn't really care much for fighting. So this is nice that we got this clarification and shows why Naziens was chosen to be King's successor in the first place, which I absolutely love. And with that, the Secretary says, that's why I chose you, and now's the time to start using me in return. As they're talking, Ruthless calls on the Naziens to come down already. You can't just mutter to yourself up there all day. If you don't want to fight, then forfeit. And as even the announcer's like, we can't keep going on like this, surrender or just fight to the point of your death, I guess. But that's then Naziens raises their hand with a finger up as we see the pendant begin to spiral away and change form, shocking Ruthless. As Nazien's like, I don't even know how to use a Spirit Spear, but the Secretary is guiding Naziens through it, saying it's really easy. Like before, it's all how you picture it. What kind of power are you looking for right now? Of course, with this sliver that the second form can use, this is the best you're able to do right now. Ruthless is in shock as we see the Spirit Spear Chastifol's first form in regards to Naziens being Sponge Percival, like a giant chibi Percival made out of moss. That is hilarious. Now honestly, I feel like this would fit more as a second form Guardian for Naziens, which would fit a lot more, but maybe the particular forms are like different for Naziens in particular, which would be interesting to see. But anyway, we see this Sponge Percival that Naziens created, which even Donnie's like dumbfounded, like, the hell is this? As Naziens then slams Chastiefol on top of the Purgatory gate. Now, Ruthless ends up dodging out of the way, but then we see something interesting. After smashing down on the gateway, it seems that this giant Chastiefol is actually sucking in all the Purgatory miasma that has been released and is beginning to darken and be clouded by the miasma. Naziens, acting quickly, ends up changing the form of Chastiefol again to use this energy from the miasma in order to take out the actual root of it. As Naziens then changes Chastiefol into its second form, Spirit Spear Chastiefol, second form, Spirit Spear. As we see, this version of the Spirit Spear that Naziens created also looks like Percival in the shape of a literal two-pronged spear, and then lunges it square at the Purgatory gateway, destroying it in a singular blow, knocking Ruthless back as Naziens places their blade right in Ruthless's face, shocking everybody, and with the blade to Ruthless's head, Ruthless forfeits, giving Naziens the victory as the pendant changes back into the Sacred Tree avatar that was created by Naziens as the two of them smirk with glee. And that is the end of the chapter. Honestly, this was another great chapter. I'm so glad that Naziens ended up using their Spirit Spear. This was a perfect opportunity to utilize that ability. I would have also liked a bit of a combo with the Sacred Treasure gloves that Dubs created, but that'll be for a different time. And based on what was being said, we can surmise that right now Naziens might only be able to use 2 forms of Chastiefol's Spirit Spear, but it could be more and we just haven't seen full utilization of it. And the fact that this is a small piece of the Sacred Tree means that if Naziens gets the whole thing, the power will be a lot more immeasurable. But still, being able to destroy a gateway to Purgatory is still a pretty good feat. And Naziens is getting direct advice and help from the actual Sacred Tree that his weapon is forged from, so there's already a massive boost to Naziens already, and I'm really excited to see what happens next. Because now, this just means that now this sets up Naziens to take on Diordra, and unless there is some cheating, Naziens is going to absolutely destroy Diordra, or again, Diordra unleashes a brand new ability in the midst of battle, or cheating occurs again that knocks Naziens out of the fight, which would not be good for Percival's good graces because he's already had enough with what happened to An. If this happens to Naziens, then yeah, the guy's going to be out for blood. But that is it for chapter 173 of Four Nights: The Apocalypse. This was honestly, again, really good chapter. I liked the fight. I liked getting more insight into the Spirit Spear and the whole reason why it chose Nasiens in the previous arc to begin with. And it adds more credibility to King's whole character as well, so you'll always love to see that. Nasien's wedding, also really good to see, makes a lot of sense with what happened in this chapter, and I'm curious to see what's going to happen next, and I'm looking forward to how Nasiens will go stronger to the future, and slowly unlock more of Chastiefol's full power. And it'd be pretty fun to see if they were all Percival themed, which fits so well for Nasien. But let me know in the comment section down below what you think of this chapter and all the revelations we had in this, and what you think is going to happen in the future. And what's more, if you haven't already, like and subscribe and hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. Really helps, and it shows you guys enjoy the content I make here on the channel and shows you want to see more. And unfortunately, we have break for the chapter next week. So the following week is when we're going to get chapter 174, which will be the last chapter of the year. So I'm planning to get a discussion video out next week to fill the slot of the chapter, so look forward to that, because I want to keep discussions going. But with all that said and done, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I hope you all have an awesome day.
Easy.